The morning at the palace began quietly, with sunlight streaming through the tall windows and catching on the polished floors. The grand hall smelled faintly of fresh flowers, and the gentle clatter of footsteps echoed softly as staff moved from room to room. Princess Charlotte's laughter, light and carefree, floated through the corridors, filling the space with warmth and life. She was a curious child, full of energy, always moving from one room to the next, stopping to examine paintings or peek into small alcoves she had never noticed before. Her nanny followed closely behind, keeping a watchful eye, and a sense of calm enveloped the palace, the kind of calm that made everything feel secure, like nothing could disturb the peace. But beneath the surface, not everything was calm. One of the palace guards, Jonathan, had a strange feeling that something was off. He had been stationed at the palace for many years, and he had seen all kinds of visitors, all kinds of situations, but something about today made his instincts tingle. He had noticed a woman, Camilla, entering the palace earlier. She appeared polite, and at first glance nothing about her seemed unusual. Yet there was something in the way she moved, in the way her eyes flicked across the room, that made Jonathan uneasy. She smiled politely at the staff and nodded as if everything was normal. But it was the small, almost imperceptible things, the way her hands fidgeted, the quick, restless glances that drew Jonathan's attention. Charlotte moved from the drawing room to the library, picking up a small book she had found and flipping through the pages. Jonathan stayed nearby, his eyes never leaving the visitor. Camilla seemed unusually interested in the princess, lingering where she shouldn't, watching her with an intensity that felt uncomfortable. Jonathan didn't want to overreact, but his training told him to stay alert. Sometimes danger came quietly, almost unnoticed, and the signs were subtle, easy to overlook unless someone was paying attention. Charlotte's nanny, unaware of Jonathan's unease, chatted softly with the princess, keeping her calm and happy. Charlotte skipped over to the piano, pressing the keys and giggling as the notes rang out. The palace staff moved efficiently, serving tea and attending to the needs of visitors, all the while unaware of the tension that Jonathan felt. He continued to watch, pacing lightly, ready to step in if necessary. There was no obvious reason for alarm, but he had learned that instinct was often more reliable than appearances. Camilla's movements became more noticeable as time passed. She lingered near Charlotte, asking questions about her toys and the books she was looking at. Her voice was calm, her words polite, but her eyes held something else, something sharp and calculating. Jonathan's heart rate increased slightly, the adrenaline of anticipation making him more alert. He knew that he could not ignore these subtle signs. If something happened, he had to be ready to act in an instant. Charlotte laughed at a funny story her nanny was telling, and turned to show Camilla a drawing she had made. Camilla leaned closer, her expression curious but also tense. Jonathan stepped slightly closer, subtly positioning himself between the two, not wanting to draw attention but making sure he was ready. The palace was filled with visitors and staff, but in that moment, it felt as though the world had narrowed to just the three of them. The minutes passed, each one stretching slightly longer as Jonathan's sense of unease grew. He watched Camilla's movements carefully, noting every shift in her posture, every gesture that seemed slightly too deliberate. He had no proof that anything was wrong, yet his instincts screamed that he needed to remain alert. Guards were trained to recognize threats, but sometimes it was not the obvious danger that was the most dangerous. It was the hidden, unexpected one. Charlotte wandered over to a small table near the window, picking up a delicate porcelain figurine. Camilla followed her, smiling gently, but there was an intensity in her gaze that made Jonathan's muscles tighten. He stayed close, his body ready to move at a moment's notice. He had protected members of the royal family before, but the thought of harm coming to a child added a weight to his vigilance that was difficult to describe. Every step he took, every glance he cast, was a precaution. The palace staff continued their routines, unaware of the growing tension. A maid passed by with a tray of tea, and Charlotte's nanny adjusted the princess's dress, smoothing the fabric gently. Camilla asked another question, leaning slightly closer, and Jonathan noticed the subtle shift in her stance. She was too close, too focused, and something in her eyes was wrong. His training kicked in, a series of practiced instincts that guided his movements without thought. He subtly moved to place himself slightly in front of Charlotte, maintaining a barrier without alarming anyone. Charlotte, oblivious to the tension, picked up a small doll, and showed it to Camilla. Camilla smiled and reached out, her fingers brushing against the doll, but her eyes never left the princess. Jonathan's mind raced, calculating the distance, the speed, and the potential for harm. He had no idea what Camilla might do next, but he knew he had to be ready. Guards were trained to react instantly, to protect first and ask questions later. And Jonathan's focus was absolute. For a moment, it seemed that the calm of the palace would continue, that the morning would pass without incident. Charlotte's laughter rang out again as she twirled around, holding the doll, completely unaware of the invisible tension that surrounded her. Jonathan allowed himself a brief glance at her, her innocence and joy giving him a renewed sense of purpose. He had dedicated his life to protecting others, and moments like this, where danger was unseen but possible, were when his role mattered most. Camilla took a step closer, her movements deliberate, almost imperceptible, but enough to trigger a heightened sense of alert in Jonathan. Every fiber of his being was focused on maintaining control, on ensuring Charlotte's safety. The palace seemed to shrink around them, the distant sounds of staff and visitors fading as he concentrated entirely on the situation. He had no reason to act yet. No overt threat had occurred, but preparation was essential. In moments of crisis, hesitation could mean harm. Charlotte turned toward the window, her eyes lighting up at the view of the gardens. Camilla followed her gaze, her expression unreadable, but Jonathan noticed the subtle tightening of her hands. He remained close, his posture relaxed but ready, a calm center in the midst of potential chaos. He had learned over the years that danger often arrived without warning, and preparation was the best defense. Time seemed to stretch as Jonathan continued to observe. Every movement, every glance, every subtle gesture was noted and assessed. Charlotte remained blissfully unaware, exploring her surroundings with the natural curiosity of a child. Jonathan's presence was unnoticed by her, yet it was a silent shield, a protective barrier that had already prevented potential danger. The morning continued, with the sunlight shifting slightly, casting new shadows across the grand halls. The palace staff went about their duties, still unaware of the tension that Jonathan felt. Camilla's presence was polite and controlled, yet there was a sense of anticipation, a quiet energy that made Jonathan uneasy. He had no way of knowing what might happen next, only that he had to be ready for anything. Charlotte picked up another small toy, showing it to her nanny, and laughing at its funny features. Jonathan's eyes never left Camilla, who remained close, her movements measured and careful. He continued to position himself strategically, subtly adjusting his distance to ensure that he could act instantly if necessary. Every instinct, every training exercise, every past experience had led to this moment. For Jonathan, the morning was a delicate balance of observation and readiness. He could not allow himself to relax, not even for a moment, because the safety of a child depended on his vigilance. The palace, with its beauty and calm, could not mask the potential for danger that lurked in small, quiet actions. Jonathan understood that courage was not just about reacting in the moment. It was about preparation, awareness, and the willingness to step forward when needed. As Charlotte continued to explore, Jonathan's mind remained alert. He noticed the slight shifts in Camilla's posture, the subtle movements of her hands, the intensity in her eyes. These were small details, but in his experience they were often the earliest signs of trouble. He did not speak, did not alert anyone unnecessarily, but his presence was a constant quiet protection. The morning carried on, each minute building a sense of anticipation. Jonathan's focus never wavered. He knew that any sudden movement, any unexpected action could change everything in an instant. Protecting Charlotte was his responsibility, and he was determined to uphold it no matter what. The palace, with its grandeur and calm, seemed unaware of the storm that could arrive at any second. Jonathan's vigilance was the unseen force keeping it at bay, a silent promise that he could not let harm reach the child in his care. Charlotte laughed once more, holding up her toys as if showing them to an invisible audience. Jonathan allowed himself a brief smile, knowing that for now she was safe. He would continue to watch, to anticipate, and to prepare, because in moments like this, calm could be broken in an instant, and when that happened, there would be no time to hesitate. He could not let it happen, not to Charlotte, not while he was there. The morning calm that had filled the palace was shattered in an instant. 1 second. Princess Charlotte was holding her doll and laughing at something her nanny said, and the next Camilla moved with sudden, sharp intent. It happened so quickly that for a moment Jonathan's mind struggled to process it. Camilla lunged toward the princess, her movements fast and unpredictable. It was not a casual gesture. It was forceful, and it carried the unmistakable threat of danger. Jonathan's instincts kicked in immediately. He stepped forward without hesitation, positioning himself between Camilla and Charlotte. His training took over, his body moving faster than thought, each muscle ready to act. He shouted a sharp command to stop, but Camilla did not listen. The sound of his voice echoed in the hallway, alerting other staff and guards, but the focus was on the moment, protecting the child in front of him. Charlotte froze, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. She did not understand what was happening, only that someone was suddenly moving toward her with alarming speed. Her nanny reached out instinctively, trying to shield her, but Jonathan had already moved in. He grabbed Camilla's arm, trying to stop her advance, but she struggled violently. The sudden resistance sent them both a step backward, and the world seemed to narrow down to the struggle in front of him. The palace, which had felt secure and calm moments ago, now felt tense and heavy. The soft sounds of footsteps and distant chatter were replaced by sharp, urgent movements. Guards ran toward the commotion, alerted by Jonathan's shout. Staff gasped and called out, trying to keep the princess safe while the struggle unfolded. Jonathan's focus did not waver. His eyes were fixed on Camilla, on every twitch of her body, every motion that could signal her next move. Camilla's aggression was fierce, almost desperate. She pushed against Jonathan, trying to break free. He adjusted his grip, leaning his weight to counter hers, using controlled force to hold her back. It was a delicate balance. Too much force could escalate the situation further, but too little could risk Charlotte's safety. Each movement had to be calculated, instinctive and precise. Charlotte clung to her nanny, her small body trembling as she watched the struggle unfold. Fear and confusion filled her eyes, but she was unharmed. Jonathan's presence was the barrier between her and danger, and he refused to let her see anything worse. He positioned himself so that Camilla could not reach the princess, keeping his arms firm, his stance grounded. His heart raced, adrenaline flooding his body, but his focus remained sharp. Other guards arrived within seconds, forming a protective circle around Charlotte and her nanny. They moved quickly, surrounding Camilla and limiting her movements. The woman's resistance intensified, but Jonathan and the other guards coordinated silently, each knowing their role. They were trained for emergencies, but the reality of the moment, a child in immediate danger, added a weight to their actions that training alone could not replicate. Camilla's face was tense, her eyes wide and focused. There was anger there, but also fear. It was impossible to tell what had driven her to this moment, but Jonathan had no time to think about motives. The only thing that mattered was keeping Charlotte safe. Each second felt stretched, the struggle lingering yet moving in rapid, chaotic bursts. Jonathan's grip tightened, his voice firm, guiding the other guards as they maneuvered to restrain her. Charlotte's nanny held her close, whispering words of comfort, trying to calm her as best she could. Charlotte's small hands gripped her nanny's clothing, seeking security. The laughter and carefree play of the morning were gone, replaced by the raw, urgent reality of fear. Jonathan felt a surge of protectiveness, a determination that he could not fail in this moment. The princess's safety depended entirely on him and the quick actions of the guards around him. Camilla's resistance began to weaken slightly as more guards joined in, holding her firmly. She struggled, but the combined force of trained professionals was more than she could overcome. Jonathan maintained his focus, his arms steady, his eyes never leaving hers. The tension in her movements was palpable, each motion sharp and unpredictable. Jonathan knew that one mistake could result in harm, but he refused to let it happen. He had to remain calm, precise, and strong. The staff who had witnessed the initial moments of the attack began to assist in securing the area, guiding Charlotte and her nanny to a safer room. They moved quickly, efficiently, ensuring that the princess was out of immediate reach. Jonathan stayed behind with the other guards, keeping Camilla restrained while maintaining control of the situation. The air was thick with tension, the sudden violence leaving everyone shaken. Jonathan's mind raced as he assessed every possibility. What could Camilla do next? How could they prevent any further risk to Charlotte? His training guided his movements, but there was also an instinctual understanding that this moment demanded more than just technique. It demanded courage, presence of mind, and unwavering focus. He adjusted his stance slightly, shifting his weight to counter any sudden movement from Camilla, ready to react instantly if needed. The struggle was intense but contained. Camilla continued to resist, pushing and pulling, but the coordinated effort of the guards kept her in check. Jonathan's voice remained firm, issuing clear commands guiding both Camilla and his fellow guards. He knew that control was essential, that even a small lapse could result in disaster. Each second of restraint was crucial, a barrier between potential harm and the safety of the princess. Charlotte watched from a safe distance, her small hands clutching her nanny's dress. Fear was evident in her eyes, but there was also trust. She knew on some level that Jonathan and the guards were there to protect her. That trust, even in a moment of confusion and danger, gave Jonathan a renewed sense of purpose. He could feel the weight of responsibility, but he also felt the clarity of his role. He was the shield, and he would not fail. As the struggle continued, the guards carefully guided Camilla toward a more secure area. Every movement was deliberate, controlled, ensuring that Charlotte remained out of reach. Jonathan maintained his presence, a calm center amid the chaos, ready to react to any sudden change. The adrenaline of the moment surged through him, but he relied on his training to remain composed, his focus absolute. The commotion had drawn attention from other parts of the palace. Staff and visitors looked on with concern, some frozen in shock, others moving quickly to assist. Jonathan's voice cut through the noise, directing the guards and keeping control of the situation. He remained between Camilla and any potential danger, every motion purposeful, every step calculated. The physical struggle was taxing, but his determination to protect Charlotte was stronger than fatigue or fear. Camilla's movements began to slow slightly, her energy waning under the combined effort of the guards. Jonathan maintained his grip, his stance firm, ensuring that she could not break free. His mind remained sharp, analyzing every possibility, every movement, every risk. He knew that even a small lapse could have consequences, but he refused to allow harm to reach the child. Charlotte's nanny whispered softly to her, offering reassurance and comfort. Charlotte clung tightly, her wide eyes following the struggle from a safe distance. The sudden terror of the morning had left its mark, but the presence of Jonathan and the guards provided a sense of security. Charlotte's innocence was preserved, her safety maintained by the courage and quick action of those around her. Finally, after what felt like an eternity but had only been moments, Camilla's resistance diminished enough for the guards to fully restrain her. Jonathan stepped back slightly, still vigilant, ensuring that the princess remained protected. The immediate threat had passed, but the tension in the air lingered, a reminder of how quickly danger could arise. Charlotte was guided to a quiet room, safe from further risk. She clung to her nanny, her small body trembling slightly but unharmed. Jonathan allowed himself a brief exhale, the rush of adrenaline slowly fading, replaced by relief. He had acted without hesitation, without second thought, and in that instant he had prevented harm. His training, instincts, and courage had all come together to protect the child in his care. The staff and other guards took a moment to regroup, checking on each other and ensuring that everyone was safe. Jonathan's focus remained on Charlotte, watching from a distance as she began to calm down. The morning had changed abruptly, the peace of the palace shattered. But thanks to quick thinking and decisive action, the outcome had been prevented from becoming tragic. Jonathan reflected on the events, understanding the importance of vigilance, preparation, and courage. In moments like these, seconds mattered, and the instinct to act decisively could make the difference between safety and harm. He had protected Charlotte, but he also knew that every day at the palace required constant awareness, readiness, and commitment to the well-being of those under his care. The tension slowly eased, but the memory of the attack remained vivid. Charlotte, though young, would remember the fear, the sudden danger, and the presence of someone willing to step in without hesitation. Jonathan's actions were a silent promise, a demonstration of courage that went beyond words. The palace, once calm and serene, had been reminded of the fragility of safety and the essential role of those who stood vigilant to preserve it. The palace felt strangely silent after the struggle, though the tension hung in the air like a heavy fog. Guards stood in small clusters, whispering to one another, their eyes still scanning the corridors. Jonathan remained close, his body alert, his eyes constantly checking on Charlotte from a distance. The princess sat quietly with her nanny, holding her doll tightly, the bright curiosity she had shown earlier now replaced with wide-eyed caution. She had seen the aggression, felt the sudden danger, and though she was unharmed, the fear lingered. Camilla had been restrained, but the situation was far from over. Jonathan and the other guards knew that she could not be left alone even for a moment. The palace was designed for openness and beauty, but in moments like this, that very openness became a risk. Every hallway, every doorway, every room could be a hiding place or a point of sudden danger. Jonathan's mind worked quickly, thinking several steps ahead, anticipating what Camilla might do next. He and two other guards carefully moved Camilla toward a more secure location, a small controlled room where she could be contained without causing harm to anyone. She resisted initially, but the combined effort of the guards made her struggle futile. Jonathan kept his grip firm, guiding her carefully, making sure her arms were restrained but not in a way that could injure her. It was a delicate balance, one that required both strength and precision. Charlotte remained in the sitting room with her nanny, her small hands clutching her doll tightly. She watched the guards move Camilla, sensing that something serious had happened, though she did not fully understand. The fear in her eyes was softened by trust. Trust in Jonathan and the guards who had acted so quickly to protect her. Her nanny whispered calming words, stroking Charlotte's hair gently, but it was clear that the child had experienced a moment she would not forget. Jonathan returned briefly to Charlotte, giving her a reassuring nod. He could see the worry still lingering in her eyes, the tremor in her small hands. He crouched slightly, speaking softly, letting her know she was safe. "It's okay," he said. "You're safe now." Charlotte nodded, the tension in her small body slowly easing. It was a brief moment of comfort, but it mattered more than anything else in the world to her. The palace staff began to organize, ensuring that everything was under control. They closed certain areas temporarily, keeping visitors and other staff away from the immediate scene. It was necessary to prevent further confusion and maintain safety. Jonathan coordinated quietly with the other guards, making sure that Camilla's movements were monitored, that she remained restrained, and that Charlotte's area was secure. The fight was over, but vigilance remained critical. Camilla's eyes darted around the room as she was led into the secure area. There was a mixture of fear, anger, and something else Jonathan could not identify. Her resistance had diminished, but her energy was not gone. Jonathan stayed close, guiding the guards and maintaining control, ready to react instantly if she attempted anything further. The palace's usual calm had been replaced with controlled tension, each person aware that the day's events were serious and could have been worse. Charlotte, watching from a safe distance, began to relax slightly as she realized she was truly out of immediate danger. She clung to her nanny, whispering questions softly, trying to understand why someone had acted aggressively. Jonathan smiled faintly, kneeling near the child once again to provide reassurance. His presence was a silent shield, a promise that she was protected, and that she could continue to explore the palace when the danger had passed. The other guards remained in position, keeping the hall secure. Jonathan knew that even though the immediate threat had been contained, it was important not to assume the danger was completely gone. Camilla's sudden aggression had been unpredictable, and it was unclear whether it was an isolated incident or the beginning of something more. Every corridor and hallway was monitored carefully, every potential risk evaluated. The palace, with all its grandeur, was also vulnerable, and vigilance was the only way to ensure safety. Jonathan spoke quietly with the other guards, coordinating their positions and ensuring that Charlotte remained protected. "Keep her close," he said. "Do not let her out of sight. Make sure no one else enters this area." The other guards nodded, understanding the importance of every word. Jonathan's experience had taught him that in situations like this, clear communication and calm authority were essential. Panic could make a situation worse, but careful coordination could prevent tragedy. Camilla, now contained in the secure room, began to calm slightly, though her eyes remained sharp and focused. Jonathan observed her carefully, noting the subtle shifts in her expression, the faint twitch of her fingers, the tension in her shoulders. He could not let his guard down, even for a moment. Her intentions were unknown, her behavior unpredictable, and the safety of the princess remained his top priority. Charlotte's nanny whispered reassurances, explaining gently that the situation was under control. Charlotte clung to her doll, still wide-eyed but beginning to trust that she was safe. Jonathan stayed nearby, a steady presence making sure the child felt protected. His focus on her safety did not waver, even as he assessed the remaining risks. In moments like this, instinct and training combined, guiding every movement, every decision. The palace staff began to return to their routines, though more cautiously. Some offered quiet support to Charlotte, helping her regain a sense of normalcy. Others worked with the guards to ensure that every door was secure, that every hallway was monitored. The morning had taken a sudden turn into chaos, but the calm return of order depended entirely on the vigilance and courage of those who acted quickly. Jonathan's thoughts remained clear and focused. He reflected on the rapid escalation, on how quickly danger could appear and how easily it could threaten someone innocent. His determination to protect Charlotte had never wavered, and it would not waver now. He understood that courage was not about acting without fear, but about acting despite it, about putting oneself in the path of danger to safeguard others. Camilla, sitting restrained, continued to observe the room with a sharp focus. Jonathan watched carefully, noting every movement, every subtle change in posture. He was aware that she could attempt to act again, though the immediate threat had been contained. His vigilance remained unwavering, his body and mind prepared to respond instantly if necessary. Every second mattered, and every detail could make the difference between safety and harm. Charlotte began to ask quiet questions about what had happened. Her nanny answered gently, explaining that she was safe and that the guards had prevented her from being hurt. Jonathan smiled faintly at her curiosity, kneeling slightly to meet her gaze. "You're safe now," he reassured her again. "No one can hurt you while we are here." Charlotte nodded, her small hands clutching her doll tightly, feeling a little braver with each word. The palace slowly began to regain its rhythm, though the memory of the struggle remained vivid. Guards remained in place, watching every corner, ready to act if needed. Jonathan remained near Charlotte, his presence a calm reassurance. He understood that protection was not only physical, but also emotional. A child needed to feel safe, to trust that those who were charged with her care would never let harm reach her. Camilla's energy began to diminish, though her gaze remained intense. Jonathan observed quietly, ensuring that she could not act again. He communicated silently with the other guards, coordinating their positions and maintaining a controlled perimeter. Every precaution mattered. The morning's events had demonstrated how quickly calm could be broken, and how important it was to remain vigilant even after the immediate threat had passed. Charlotte's laughter slowly returned, soft and tentative at first as she began to play quietly with her doll. Jonathan allowed himself a brief sense of relief, knowing that she was beginning to feel safe again. His focus remained sharp, but he allowed the child a moment of normalcy. Courage and vigilance were essential, but so was reassurance and calm, especially for someone so young and innocent. The other guards monitored Camilla carefully, ensuring that she remained restrained and that the situation remained under control. Jonathan stayed alert, ready to act if anything changed. The palace once again felt secure, though the memory of the struggle lingered. Jonathan understood that safety was never guaranteed, but it could be maintained through preparation, attention, and unwavering commitment. Charlotte's nanny continued to offer comfort and explanation, helping the child process the events. Jonathan stayed nearby, a steady presence providing reassurance through his calm and watchful demeanor. He knew that the experience would leave an impression on her, but he also knew that she would remember that there were people who acted decisively to protect her when danger appeared. As the morning progressed, the palace gradually returned to a quieter rhythm. Visitors were kept away from sensitive areas, staff worked carefully, and the guards maintained their positions. Jonathan's presence remained constant, a silent guarantee of protection. He reflected on the events, understanding the fragility of safety and the importance of vigilance, courage and quick action. Even as the tension eased, Jonathan knew that the memory of the struggle would remain with everyone involved. It was a reminder of how quickly danger could appear, and how essential it was to act decisively to protect the vulnerable. Charlotte, though young, would carry the knowledge that there were people who would stand between her and harm. people whose courage and dedication ensured her safety. Jonathan's focus never wavered, his mind alert to every sound, every movement, every potential risk. He had acted decisively to protect Charlotte, and he would continue to do so for as long as he was needed. The morning had tested his courage, his training, and his instincts, and he had met that challenge with determination and skill. The palace, with its beauty and history, had witnessed moments of danger and courage that day. Jonathan's actions were part of that history, a silent testament to the power of vigilance, preparation, and the human instinct to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Charlotte, safe and reassured, continued her morning under the watchful eyes of those who had acted so decisively to shield her from harm. The palace had settled into an uneasy quiet. The echoes of the morning's chaos still lingered in the halls, and every step seemed to carry a weight that had not been there before. Guards moved carefully, their eyes scanning corners and doorways, their ears tuned to the faintest sound. Jonathan remained close to Princess Charlotte, his presence steady and reassuring. She sat with her nanny, her doll clutched tightly to her chest, her wide eyes still reflecting a mix of fear and curiosity. Charlotte asked her nanny soft questions, her voice quiet, almost trembling. "Why did she come after me?" she whispered. Her small hands clutched the fabric of her dress as if holding on to safety itself. The nanny stroked her hair gently, trying to explain in words that a child could understand, though the truth was complicated. "Sometimes people feel angry or upset," she said softly. "But you are safe now. Everyone here is protecting you." Charlotte nodded, still uncertain, but comforted slightly by the words and the steady presence of the guards around her. Jonathan's eyes never left the hallway, his focus unwavering. Camilla had been contained, but he knew that the aftermath of such an incident was just as important as the moment itself. He needed to ensure that Charlotte felt safe, that the palace staff were calm, and that no further disruptions occurred. He coordinated quietly with the other guards, checking positions and discussing strategies for maintaining security. Even in the calm, vigilance was essential. Staff began moving cautiously through the palace, returning to their routines but with careful attention. They offered quiet support to Charlotte, bringing small comforts and encouraging her to return to normal activities. The bright, carefree energy of the morning had been replaced with a careful calm, each movement deliberate, each interaction mindful of the recent danger, Jonathan observed, silently guiding and overseeing the restoration of order. Camilla was kept in the secure room, restrained and monitored. She sat quietly at first, her breathing uneven, her hands fidgeting. Jonathan and 2 other guards kept watch, ensuring that she could not attempt to act again. He studied her carefully, noticing the tension in her shoulders, the anxious flick of her eyes, the subtle movements that indicated unease. Even in restraint, she was unpredictable, and he could not allow himself to relax completely. Meanwhile, Charlotte began to explore the room slowly, encouraged by her nanny and the presence of Jonathan. She touched her doll gently, her curiosity returning in small measures. Her nanny whispered reassurances, praising her bravery for staying calm during a frightening moment. Jonathan remained nearby, watching for any sign of distress, ready to intervene if necessary. He understood that safety was not only physical but also emotional, and that children needed reassurance as much as protection. The palace staff gathered in a quiet room to discuss the morning's events. They shared observations and recounted what had happened, ensuring that every detail was documented. The incident was unusual, and understanding how it occurred was crucial. Jonathan contributed, giving a clear account of what he had observed and how the situation had been handled. He spoke calmly, detailing the rapid escalation, his response, and the steps taken to protect the princess. The staff listened attentively, recognizing the importance of his vigilance and quick thinking. As the hours passed, Charlotte's laughter began to return, small and hesitant at first. She played quietly with her doll, occasionally glancing toward Jonathan for reassurance. Each time he smiled gently, nodding or offering a soft word, she relaxed a little more. It was a slow process, but the princess was resilient, and the care and protection she received helped restore a sense of safety. Jonathan reflected on the events, thinking about the importance of preparedness and instinct. The sudden attack had been unexpected, but his years of training and experience had allowed him to respond effectively. He had acted without hesitation, driven by the knowledge that in moments of danger every second mattered. He also understood that the aftermath required patience and attention, that the emotional impact on Charlotte and the staff needed as much care as the physical safety of the princess. Camilla remained in the secure room, now calmer, but still restless. The guards continued to monitor her closely, ensuring that she could not leave or cause harm. Jonathan occasionally checked in, assessing her behavior and making sure that the restraints were secure yet not harmful. He noted the subtle signs of stress and tension, understanding that even restrained, she could be unpredictable. His focus remained absolute, every movement deliberate, every decision measured. Charlotte's nanny encouraged her to return to her small activities, offering drawing materials and toys to help her feel normal again. Slowly, she began to engage, her small hands moving carefully as she colored and created. Jonathan stayed nearby, observing, ready to offer comfort or intervene if needed. The careful attention to detail, the constant presence, and the gentle guidance helped Charlotte regain a sense of security. The palace staff worked together to restore order, securing areas, monitoring hallways, and reviewing procedures to prevent any recurrence. Jonathan spoke quietly with the team, emphasizing the importance of vigilance and careful observation. They discussed lessons learned, focusing on ways to enhance safety and maintain calm in the face of unexpected events. The incident had been a reminder of the fragility of security and the importance of constant awareness. Jonathan also took time to check in personally with Charlotte, kneeling beside her and speaking softly. "You are safe now," he said gently. "Nothing can hurt you here while we are around." Charlotte looked up at him, her small eyes reflecting both curiosity and trust. She nodded slowly, beginning to understand that she was protected and that the frightening moments had passed. Camilla's presence remained a concern, even as the immediate danger had passed. The guards maintained strict monitoring, ensuring that she was contained and could not act impulsively. Jonathan observed her, noting her movements and expressions, understanding that her unpredictability required constant attention. Every detail mattered, and he remained alert, prepared to act instantly if the situation changed. The palace slowly returned to a cautious rhythm. Staff continued their duties, careful not to disturb Charlotte but maintaining vigilance. Jonathan guided them quietly, offering advice and instructions, ensuring that safety was never compromised. The morning's events had highlighted the importance of preparedness, observation, and decisive action, and everyone was acutely aware of their responsibilities. Charlotte, now feeling more secure, began to interact gently with her doll, speaking softly to it as if sharing her thoughts. Jonathan watched, his focus unwavering. He understood that restoring a child's sense of safety required more than protection. It required patience, reassurance, and the quiet presence of someone who could be trusted completely. He remained a steady figure, a silent shield, ensuring that Charlotte's recovery was as gentle and complete as possible. Camilla, still in the secure room, began to exhibit signs of fatigue. Her movement slowed and the tension in her body eased slightly. The guards maintained their positions, observing her closely, ready to respond if necessary. Jonathan noted the subtle changes, aware that even small movements could indicate potential risks. His focus remained sharp, every second accounted for, every possibility considered. Charlotte's nanny encouraged her to draw a picture of the morning's events in a safe and imaginative way. Charlotte hesitated, then began, her small hands moving carefully as she recreated moments with colors and shapes. It was a therapeutic exercise, helping her process the fear and confusion she had experienced. Jonathan stayed close, watching over her gently, ensuring that she remained calm and safe. The palace staff continued to work together, coordinating movements, securing areas, and discussing the events quietly. Jonathan spoke with each guard individually, reviewing positions, observations, and procedures. He emphasized the importance of remaining vigilant even after the immediate threat had passed. The morning had demonstrated how quickly danger could appear, and how essential it was to act decisively to protect the vulnerable. As the day progressed, Charlotte's confidence slowly returned. She played quietly with her doll, occasionally looking toward Jonathan for reassurance. His calm presence provided comfort, a reminder that she was protected and that the danger had truly passed. The combination of careful supervision, gentle guidance, and the restoration of normal routines helped her regain a sense of safety and trust. Jonathan reflected on the events, thinking about the importance of courage, vigilance, and empathy. Protecting someone required more than physical strength. It required awareness, patience, and the ability to act decisively in critical moments. He had done what was necessary to ensure Charlotte's safety, but he also understood that supporting her emotional recovery was equally important. Camilla remained contained, her energy now diminished but her presence still a reminder of the danger that had emerged so suddenly. Jonathan and the guards maintained strict vigilance, ensuring that she could not escape or cause harm. He observed her carefully, aware that unpredictable behavior required constant attention. Even in restraint, she represented a potential risk, and preparedness was essential. Charlotte's nanny encouraged her to return to her small activities, offering toys and drawing materials to help her feel normal again. Slowly she began to engage, her small hands moving carefully as she created and explored. Jonathan stayed nearby, observing and providing subtle reassurance when needed. The combination of gentle guidance, protective presence, and structured routine helped restore a sense of security. The palace continued its cautious rhythm, staff and guards working together to maintain order and safety. Jonathan coordinated quietly, ensuring that every detail was accounted for, every potential risk considered. The morning had been a stark reminder of the fragility of calm and the importance of vigilance, courage, and decisive action in moments of danger. As the afternoon approached, Charlotte's laughter returned in small bursts. She played quietly, sometimes looking toward Jonathan with a smile. His calm presence provided reassurance, a reminder that she was safe and protected. The gradual return of normalcy was a testament to careful attention, patience, and the human instinct to protect those who are vulnerable. Jonathan remained vigilant, observing every movement, every sound, and every reaction. Camilla's restraint was secure, and the immediate threat was neutralized, but his focus did not waver. Protecting the princess required constant awareness, preparedness, and the ability to respond instantly if anything changed. Every second mattered, and every detail was critical to maintaining safety. The palace, though returning to its routines, carried the memory of the morning's events. The staff and guards understood the importance of vigilance and the delicate balance between calm and danger. Jonathan's actions had ensured Charlotte's safety, and his continued presence provided reassurance to everyone involved. Charlotte, gradually regaining confidence and comfort, continued to play quietly with her toys. Jonathan remained nearby, a silent guardian, ensuring that her safety and emotional well-being were maintained. The events of the morning had left an imprint on everyone, a reminder of the importance of courage, preparation, and the quiet, unwavering commitment to protecting those who cannot protect themselves. The palace was quiet as evening approached, a gentle calm replacing the tension that had filled the halls earlier in the day. Princess Charlotte sat by the window, watching the golden sunlight spill across the gardens. Her doll was in her lap, but she occasionally glanced at the guard stationed nearby, especially Jonathan, whose steady presence had become a source of comfort. She had experienced fear that morning, but now, surrounded by people she trusted, she felt a fragile sense of safety returning. Jonathan remained close, his eyes scanning the halls, ever alert. Though the immediate danger had passed, his responsibility had not ended. The lessons of the day were clear. Vigilance was constant, protection required patience, and even small moments could carry unexpected risk. He kept his distance respectful but close enough to act immediately if needed. Each movement was deliberate, each glance purposeful. Charlotte's safety was his priority, and he would not allow complacency to creep in. The palace staff moved quietly, mindful of Charlotte's emotional state. They offered gentle smiles, spoke in soft voices, and maintained calm routines to help restore a sense of normalcy. Meals were brought carefully, toys organized, and rooms tidied. Everything was done to create a comforting environment. Charlotte's nanny guided her gently, explaining that the day's events were over and that she was safe. Charlotte listened, her small hands twisting the edge of her doll's dress, absorbing reassurance from the adults around her. Camilla remained secured in a guarded room, under constant supervision. Her energy had decreased and her initial resistance had subsided, but Jonathan and the guards remained cautious. They knew better than to assume she was harmless now that the adrenaline of the morning had faded. Her unpredictability required ongoing vigilance, and Jonathan oversaw every detail, from her restraints to her interactions with the guards. Safety was maintained not by chance but by careful planning and attentive observation. Charlotte began to explore her surroundings again, small steps at first. She moved cautiously from room to room, guided by her nanny and watched over by Jonathan. Each step was a test of her regained confidence, and each moment of calm was a victory. Jonathan's presence was silent but reassuring, a reminder that she was protected, that the frightening morning had not left her vulnerable. He allowed her small freedoms, stepping closer only when necessary, balancing safety with her need to regain normal childhood experiences. The palace gradually returned to a quieter rhythm. Guards returned to their posts, rotating shifts and checking corridors. Jonathan coordinated with them quietly, ensuring that every angle was covered, every risk accounted for. He reflected on the morning's events, thinking about the importance of preparation, instinct, and quick action. Courage had been tested, and he had acted decisively to prevent harm, but he knew that true protection extended beyond a single moment. It required patience, vigilance, and consistency. Charlotte's laughter slowly returned, small and hesitant like sunlight breaking through clouds. She played with her toys, occasionally looking toward Jonathan with a small smile, as if testing the reassurance he provided. Jonathan allowed himself a brief, quiet satisfaction, knowing that she was safe and beginning to recover emotionally. The process of regaining confidence would be gradual, and he would remain present, providing protection and calm until she no longer needed constant reassurance. Camilla remained under watch, and Jonathan made regular checks to ensure she was secure and unable to act impulsively. Her face showed fatigue now, but he did not underestimate her. The events of the morning had shown that danger could appear suddenly without warning, and he would not allow complacency. Every precaution mattered, every detail was important, and he maintained a steady focus on ensuring that nothing further could harm Charlotte. The evening brought a sense of reflection to the palace. Guards and staff gathered briefly to discuss the day's events, sharing observations and insights. They spoke quietly, calmly analyzing what had occurred and discussing ways to enhance safety procedures. Jonathan contributed with clarity, emphasizing the importance of vigilance, observation, and calm action. The incident had been a reminder of the fragility of peace and the need for preparation and courage. Charlotte sat with her nanny in a quiet corner, drawing pictures to represent her morning. She drew herself, the doll, and the guards, representing the people who had kept her safe. Her small fingers moved carefully over the paper, creating shapes and colors that reflected her experience. Jonathan observed silently, recognizing the therapeutic value of the exercise. It allowed Charlotte to process her fear in a safe, controlled way, while reinforcing the trust she had in the adults around her. As the palace prepared for the evening, Jonathan checked the secure room where Camilla was held. She remained restrained and under observation, her demeanor calmer now, though her eyes still held sharp intensity. Jonathan communicated quietly with the other guards, reviewing procedures and ensuring that every precaution was in place. Safety was maintained through constant awareness, careful attention, and measured action. Charlotte's nanny encouraged her to share stories about her day, guiding her to express her feelings in words. Charlotte spoke slowly, describing the fear she had felt and the relief of being protected. Jonathan listened quietly, nodding and offering soft reassurance when necessary. The process was delicate, helping her to reconcile the frightening experience with the reality of safety and care provided by those around her. The palace, once a place of unbroken calm, had been reminded of its vulnerability. The morning's events had highlighted the unpredictable nature of danger, the necessity of vigilance, and the importance of those entrusted with protection. Jonathan's actions had been decisive, his courage evident, but the emotional recovery of Charlotte and the maintenance of calm required just as much care and attention. Charlotte gradually returned to her small routines, playing quietly with toys, drawing, and exploring with her nanny's guidance. Jonathan stayed nearby, offering quiet reassurance through presence rather than words. He understood that children regained confidence through consistent safety, gentle encouragement, and the knowledge that trusted adults would not let harm come to them. His careful attention allowed Charlotte to regain a sense of normalcy, while ensuring that she remained protected